Everyone says there's no feelings in real estate. That's hilarious. There are so many feelings in real estate. It doesn't mean we're going to go buy an investment property based on feelings at all, but there's a fear of failure. You're about to slap a lot of money down on something. There's overwhelm. Like I call it the overwhelm epidemic. Like that is how to be a real estate investor. And you're going to get immediately bombarded and overwhelmed. There's overwhelm, all those things. And so
step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. This is a fun one. Allie, Boone, and I met through a group we're in called the Human Gathering, which brings like-minded business people and individuals together. And we had such a great conversation that I was really excited to continue our conversations and bring you on to the podcast. So Allie, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love talking about business and everything we talked about on the phone. So it'll be fun to share it with people.
Yeah, I think that you have a unique take. A lot of people look for that pivot moment, that career change moment. I don't know if they move from being an aerospace engineer into being, a real estate investor, an author, a real estate coach, teaching other people how to invest, and all of the things that you do now that help you have a fulfilling life where you're able to have flexibility.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned the pivot point. Like, I feel like a lot of people are in their original jobs or in corporate or whatever they're doing, and then they hit a pivotal point. My pivotal point happened before I ever sat down in my first cubicle. Like, I got to my first cubicle and I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. Like, I knew it. I'm like, wait, does it count if I needed a pivot point before I started? I don't know if I'm still pivoting though. I guess I was still a pivot, but yeah, it's, I think there's a lot of talk these days of lifestyle design and I mean, everything from remote work to like, how can you actually kind of take your life back a little bit? But even with all the words put to it, I think it's understated. And I think, Western society, it's really hard for us to comprehend not following the norms. And when you kind of take that bull by the horns, it's hard to describe how good it is. And sometimes I forget because I'm used to working when I want, from wherever I want. We met, I was out at the ski slopes, but sometimes I take it for granted. And then I remember back like, oh, I used to have the 9 to 5 kind of thing. And, I'm doing life how I want to. And I would love for other people to do that. Not only because it's easier to find your zone of genius when you're not under somebody else's umbrella. And not to say you can't work for somebody, but when you take your power back as far as your life, what's possible. And I think there's a lot of value in them. I know for me, it just makes me happier, when I'm living kind of true to myself versus whatever someone is trying to make me. And, I think where we are in today's world, if everyone could just get happier, I feel like that would, not to sound like the beauty queen who wants world peace, but like also I'm kind of like, it'd be kind of nice, but really getting that peace and happiness internally and understanding that you do have more control than you'd think.
Yeah. And I think that we're reaching another one of those pivotal moments. And the pandemic was one of them, right? When people were looking at like, what does my life look like? And, oh, now we have all this time to actually be together. And what do I really want to get out of work, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Now that I don't have to go into an office every day, I kind of dig those pajama pants on the Zoom calls that nobody sees.
And I've also been hearing a lot about how the creator economy, whatever that means, right? I mean, I would say you're a creator because you are thinking about real estate investing creatively. You're creating opportunities for other people to learn how you do it, right? But even agencies, I mean, we're in LA or LA adjacent, right? So CAA is even saying that the creator economy is the next big economy and businesses are going to be working with creators. And so I think that opens up a lot more space for people to think about what they want to create in the world and what that looks like and how that helps their life design. And also puts money in their pockets so that they can have, I don't want to say have it all, but essentially. So talk about that moment when you went from being an engineer, you also are a pilot, flight instructor, you have a master's in spiritual psychology. So you have all these varied interests. And then in 2012, you decided to start your investment company.
Yeah. So the short of it is, well, I already said the opener is, I went to school, I got a master's degree in aerospace engineering, and I was doing all the things that society said would make it work, right? So I even started I got the engineering degree because I was a pilot first, and I was like, I don't feel like they make enough money. Like I was like, what's the same thing as flying airplanes, but gets paid more? I was like, oh, engineering has got to be the same thing. So I naively got into engineering. It is not the same thing at all, quite the opposite, actually. But I had suffered through the school, got through it, and then I landed the dream job, right? Like I landed the company and the job that everybody would want. And like I said, before I ever sat down in my cubicle, because my office before that had been the skies. I was teaching flying through grad school. And so to suddenly put me underground in a gray cubicle at a desk, I was like, ugh. And like that degree had also taught me that maybe I'm not a very good engineer either. So I like from the minute I sat down, I was like, I have to find a way out of here. And I didn't know what that looked like. And that's something where, it's been a big learning for me of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. A lot of us get these ideas in our head. We're like, yeah, that'll work. And I was like, okay, what could work? What could get me out of here? I read every book I could find. At some point, I kind of narrowed it down. I was like, I feel like to get out of corporate, I'm either going to have to start a business or do something related to real estate investing. Those seem to be the two things that get people out of here. And it took me about 5 years. I could, there's the meandering. I chose this. I was like, well, that's not going to work. And I bounced all over the place. And then what ended up working is I tell people I had 173 business ideas, but the only one that worked is the one that I didn't necessarily plan for or plan ahead of time. And what I mean by that is while I was trying to figure out what to do, I got some advertisement for some real estate investment. I was like, well, while I have a good paycheck and I'm sitting here trying to figure it out, I might as well put my money somewhere smart. So I get into this investment, and it was really one of those one thing led to another. And I got involved in some investments. I was so excited about them. I was telling people, and they're like, wait, what are you buying? I was like, oh, you got to check this out. And so suddenly my cousin was buying properties. My mom's friend was buying properties. And the company I was sending them to eventually came to me and said, hey, you're sending us people anyways. If you'll go get your real estate license, we could pay you a referral fee. And I was like, oh, well, it seems like fun, easy side money, not thinking for a second that this was the thing I'd been looking for. And then it picked up so much steam, I ended up leaving corporate to do it. But I couldn't have planned that ahead of time. And if you had told me what I was going to end up being involved in or the company I was going to end up creating, I would have laughed. But like, that would never work. And so, I say that to say like there's a level of organic in there. I'm a huge fan of organic business building. Like if you're trying to find your way out of what you're doing, if there happens to be something that you've already made money doing, there's a good chance that that's something you could build, and it's versus forcing it and be like, well, I'm going to come with this idea. There's a really good, yep, I'm going to write the whole business plan. And I tell people don't create the business before you create the business. Like have the actions and the product or the service or whatever kind of already rolling before you build a business out of it versus structuring this whole business, the business plan, all that, hoping it's going to catch on. Because at the end of the day, we kind of don't know. And that kind of leads into, that was 2012. So 13 years, the last 13 years of my life, for somebody who was a pilot, an engineer, very like linear, checklist, step by step, entrepreneurship is not that. And it turned into such a personal development journey because I think that owning a business and running a business is not necessarily the hardest part. It's our mindset. You're going to go broke. You're not going to know where your next meal is coming from and all those kind of rites of passage. Yeah. And for someone who used to be very in control of everything that happened in their lives, that was a pretty rude awakening. But it does kind of go back to that surrender aspect of, yeah, you're going to put the effort forward, but at the end of the day, we don't really know which thing is going to land. Again, the thing that landed for me is I never could have planned it. It wouldn't even make sense on paper. And so, but yeah, that's, the last, what I say, 13 years building my business and all the roller coasters that come with it. My business has gone to $0 in the bank more than one time. All my lead generation has gone to zero more than once. And, really just kind of playing that game of like, how am I going to eat next month? Like, is this worth it? Should I go back to bartending? Like all that kind of stuff. So and that's kind of where, the degree in spiritual psychology kind of comes in handy for that. Because it's like, I tell people I have my left brain degree and my right brain degree. And the spiritual psychology basically saved me through, trying to get away from the other degree.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm seeing a lot, even with people who have like business, coaching groups and groups of people who come out of other business organizations, that they're bringing more mindfulness to their practices of business, because we have this realization we can't just let ourselves get stressed out, burned out, sick, make mistakes, kind of go off the edge at work. We need to be able to bring our whole selves to everything we do. And that includes work. And that means maybe you have to slow down, or you have to be okay with somebody else doing something instead of you doing it. Or and that's one of the biggest lessons.
Thinking about that and what you said about creator economy is, I think that the old way is no longer working. When we think of the baby boomers, if they went out and started a business, it still was pretty linear. Mental health, it was definitely a thing back then, even though we didn't know. But like these days, our nervous systems, our brains, everything going on in the world, we're not actually biologically equipped to handle all of this. So like there's so much more happening that we have to deal with. And so like you mentioned mindset. Back in the boomers' age, you needed mindset. You just follow the protocol, that kind of thing. And creator economy, the old system's not working anymore. We used to be able to go to college, guarantee a good job, and then da-da-da-da-da. And now people have to get creative. And I think there's a lot of separation happening of, it's like AI with ChatGPT. Now that I've just recently gotten on the ChatGPT bandwagon, I'm like, this is so amazing and so terrifying all at the same time, because I feel like we're outsourcing our brains. But someone made a good point to me of like, it's going to separate people, because people are either going to learn to embrace it and how to use it for good, or they're going to let them make them less intelligent, And so creator economy, the mindset stuff you're talking about, that's all new, depending on how old you are. When I was growing up, it was not a thing and it was not necessary. But the times have shifted, so the old ways are not working at all, which comes back full circle to what we're talking about of, if the old ways aren't working anyways, you might as well figure out what's going to work for you. And, the thing that I've been noticing a lot lately, I've ended up working with people in different, like whether it was a professional service, my sports massage guy, the age of some of these people I'm now working with. Actually, it was a podcast agent I was working with a couple of years ago. At some point, he was the best guy I'd worked with in so long. And I Googled him only to find out he was 18. And I was like, Trevor, what do you mean you're 18? He had already bought and sold a business by then. And my sports massage guy, he turned out he was 20. I think it was his birthday and he was turning 21. I said, excuse me, you're turning how old? But he was so good at his job. Is what I'm finding is, we kind of make fun of Gen Z and work ethic and all that kind of stuff. But the Gen Zers who are really tapping in to themselves, to their skills, to their soul, to their passion, they are so epically good at what they do. Like, when would you have ever met a sports massage person who was 20 years old who was that good back in the day, So everything we're talking about, it is opening really cool doors, but it is the responsibility of everybody to really like jump on that and actually do something with it. Because if you don't, at this point, you're along for the ride, and it is a bumpy ride right now, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I loved what you said about like just being open to opportunities, because you didn't know this was going to be the opportunity that you would fall in love with and that you would find success in and be able to.
You could not have offered me $1 million. If you had said, I'll hand you $1 million right now to believe that this will work, I'd be like, ooh, that seems really risky. I don't know.
And I think the same thing. It's funny because I'm Gen X, but I do feel like my brain around business has always been, it's like now, it's the younger generation brain where I've always wanted to iterate and ideate and try different things and like be agile, and couldn't, like you, see myself just sitting at a cubicle. So I think for a lot of us are going that direction. I'd love to hear about what you do in your business right now. Like, let's hear some of your success, because you talked about also the peaks and valleys. So talk about your success, talk about your book, the reason for creating it, and then where is that taking us now? And then we'll get into some of that stuff about like, the economy and where do we need to look at next? But first I want to hear more about
the economy. Yeah. Yeah, so the most basic core of what I do, and this is the bread and butter, and this is not even necessarily to me the meaningful part of it, is I have worked with turnkey rental properties pretty much from the gate. That's why I started buying it. Everyone's like, wait, what are you buying? I want one of those. And the turnkey rental properties, when I use that term, turnkey actually refers to the condition of a property. So the metaphor being you stick the key in the door, turn it, and you're making money day one. So the property's already rehabbed. In most cases, it already has tenants. And so you basically sign the closing papers and you're making money on day one. You could technically live next door to a turnkey property because it does technically refer to the condition. But when I'm talking about turnkey property, rental properties, I work with turnkey providers. So they're kind of like glorified flippers and they're only in certain markets, but they basically they flip properties, but to investors. So they go out, they find the distressed inventory, they rehab it, they place the tenants, they get property management set up, and you as the end buyer just get to buy the property. And so that's why people at the time were so excited because they were like, wait, how are you investing in real estate and not swinging hammers and not flipping houses? I was like, well, apparently this turnkey thing is great because it's hands off for the buyer, less due diligence and you've got to keep your brain attached. And they're out of state properties, they're only in certain markets and the basis is cash flow. So like your income should be more than your expenses every month. So every month you're making money, never mind all the other profit centers or rental properties. So turnkeys have been my absolute bread and butter of the business. That's how it started. I still do them. Every role I have somehow usually comes back to turnkeys. In addition to that, because that's the turnkeys ultimately are how I make money. That's where the money thing is. But in terms of like the creativity around it, like being in the industry, what really stood out to me, kind of going into the psychology side, is real estate investing is hard. Like it's like none of us learned it in school. There's no syllabus, there's no instruction manual. And if someone gives you an instruction manual, the chances of it actually helping you are nearly none. You don't know who the scammers are. It's just this very rogue industry. There's no checks and balances for who's in it. I mean, there's no rule. Well, there's some rules, obviously, but there's no rules for who's in it. And you're putting a lot of money up front. Because like if you sit at the computer and Google how to be a real estate investor, you're going to get bombarded by you should wholesale, you should flip a house. No, you shouldn't flip a house, and it's too much information kind of thing. And the good news and the bad news about real estate investing is that there's so many ways to do it. That's the good news. And the bad news is there are so many ways to do it. And so in all of that, like as I was doing turnkeys, because turnkeys are on the more simple side. Like I'm such a big fan of simple, which is why maybe engineering wasn't quite my thing. But, I was attracting a lot of new investors and kind of with turnkeys as like the linchpin of everything I was doing. I saw such like a mindset kind of psychology side of this is I don't think I sound like any other coach. I don't even know that many coaches, honestly, in real estate investing, but I'm more the mindset girl of like, oh, well, where's the best market? I want to go find a market to invest in. And people are like crime stats and this data and this data. And I'm like, do people want to move there? Data is nothing if you don't know how to interpret it. And to interpret it, you need context. And most people don't have that when it's like, okay, well, you got that crime stat. What are you going to do with it now? And they're like, well,
Exactly.
And so I kind of try and come at it from a different perspective and a perspective that's easier for people to comprehend. Because again, you tell a new investor, you should go flip a house and here's the things you should look for. Okay, they go find those things. They still don't know how to interpret it. Like, okay, how can we reel this back and make this industry because it brings so much value, but how can we lessen the risk of it and get it more accessible to more people? Because you have to go find your own resources in this industry. So like, how can we make it more simple? And so with all of that said, I started doing coaching at some point along the lines, some number of years in, and it wasn't even just for turnkeys. It was like, I had a woman who was a house flipper and every 6 months she would send me an SOS text of like, help. And so, like being an outsider, even though I don't flip houses, I could kind of help like, okay, here's how I would do that. And when I do the coaching, I'm kind of like the driver's ed teacher. I've got my emergency set of brake pedals to make sure you're not going to kill me. But otherwise, you're driving. I'm telling you to turn left or right, watch out for that guy, whatever. So coaching built up. And then the biggest exciting thing in the last year or two is I recently partnered with a money mastery system. And this is the first company since I've been in this industry who pitches financial freedom and actually provides it. If you follow their system, it will give you financial freedom. Financial freedom is such a buzzword and everyone's like, oh, financial freedom in 6 months. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. If you start with $5 million, sure. But so they're a whole money mastery system. And it happens to be that one part of that system is turnkey rental properties. So now I've basically come in and taken over that part of the system for them because they're like, we don't really want to deal with real estate. We're a money mastery system, but you already deal with real estate. So now I'm kind of the go-to, but partnering with this company, they are so magical. And I'm already following their system as well. And I've been in this industry forever. And it's really opened me up because while I can offer the properties, they offer the financial freedom. And when you think about it, nobody actually cares about financial freedom. We all want time freedom. It's not the financial freedom that we want. We want what financial freedom gives us. And to watch this company actually get people across the finish line has opened up my world, because now I can use my properties. Because before it's like, oh, if I sell you one or two turnkeys, like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's good. It's smart financially, but then what? Well, now I've attached myself to the then what. And that is like, everything has gotten exponentially more exciting at this point. And that's where the meaning for me comes in. And like, I've had people come back and they were so nervous to get their first property. And I had one guy earlier this week say, "You changed my life." And I was like, change his life? How would I do that with a property? But it's when you get people back, going all the way full circle to what we started talking about, when you empower people and give them the resources to be able to create the life that they want, that's where the real estate comes in my scenario. Not ever, you don't have to have it to get that. But when you get into a money mastery system, you get all those returns, you get the properties to support it, blah, blah, blah. You get to do what you want. And now we're back to the point where, you can live your life literally how you want to. So, that's not a pitch saying everyone listening to this has to do that. Right. But that's now how the meaning for me that's where I am now with my company, is like, oh, I'm helping people do this. And so that has been super exciting. Like, and again, things we couldn't plan on. If I had done a vision board of my dream business world, I would not have realized a partnership like that was possible. They are the best company, the best people, the best clients. Everything about it is a dream that I didn't even know was possible. So again, it goes back to that surrender of like, we don't always know what the thing is going to be that gets us what we want. But when we make concerted efforts towards that thing and we're open to what shows up, I think world's at your fingertips.
Well, let's talk about this shift, because that's something that we spoke about when we just, had our introductory meeting. And that shift of, you have your brand Hipster Investments, right? But then you also have seen the need to maybe do a rebrand with just who you are. Yeah. And what's interesting now is that we're seeing that people are using all of, whether it's Chat or Claude or Perplexity or Gemini or any of the other LLMs, that we're really seeing a point when people are using Chat as search, just like they're using Google for search. Yeah. So we have to make sure that our brands are also front and center. So what have been some of the changes in the way that you're thinking about your business as you, an individual and brand and personality, and Hipster Investments, and then this new partnership that you have?
Yeah. Of the whole time I've had my business, my absolute number one biggest hardship where I lack skills is marketing. Like, and I am terrible. Like, some people have said I'm really good at it, because obviously I drew a big crowd, but like, I'm more of a, if you stick me on a platform and you make me talk, people will come. If you want me to repurpose any of that talk I just gave, or send out an email blast, or try for inbound marketing, it's toast. That is my absolute non-thing. And one of the big benefits of partnering with this money mastery system is they are marketing geniuses. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, I'm more of the talent. Tell me where to be. Tell me what to talk about. Tell me, this is why I don't have my own podcast. This is why I show up on other people's podcasts, because I love talking about things and teaching things. But if you said, figure out a recording system and figure out how to market, I'm done, I just talked myself out of remembering what your original question was.
Well, I was going to say, if you need to talk about having a turnkey podcast, you know who to go to.
I do, actually. But I was just talking to someone who was wanting a podcast alternative, and I'm like, wait, who was that?
But yeah, we were talking about your brand, thinking about, do you have a holding company now? Or how is your brand distinguished from Hipster Investments, especially with this new partnership?
Yeah, so one thing that has been true from the beginning is I am very multifaceted. Like, I'm not a one-trick pony. And like, if you summarize everything that I do, I am a one-trick pony. But that trickles into different arenas. And so multiple times over the years, because like I said, I got my start, I was a writer for Bigger Pockets. And that's how I really got my start and really started drawing the people in, which meant I was sitting there writing blogs, me, Allie, not Hipster Investments. And so at that time, I created a company because I thought I had to have a company. But the reality was, I've looked at it several times over the years, is that people connect with me for me, not for Hipster. Hipster is just kind of the vehicle for all the properties. And So maybe at least twice before now, I thought, oh, well, if nobody knows hipster for hipster and they know it for me, how can I make me the primary face rather than trying to send them to a company that they're not even already at? And I've had tries and fails and all that. But it's become more important lately because the question comes up if somebody meets me and I accidentally email them back from my cash flow tactics email address, and they're like, wait, who's this is confusing. And so there was the Hipster and the Cash Flow Tactics. Hipster's my company. Cash Flow Tactics is not, but they're my now partner. And in the middle of this, I've built an online community for real estate investors. It's in work. It's there and it's alive. It's not totally breathing on its own yet, but it's like, how do I convey the different things I'm involved with without confusing people? And one of the first things I learned back when I started Hipster, I really wanted to bring in this lifestyle design component because it's like, why would you want to buy turnkeys? Well, so you can invent your dream life. And so my website had both of those concepts on there. I thought that seemed genius. And then at some point I worked with a branding person or marketing person, or whatever. And the first thing they said was, when I go to your website, I don't know what you offer. And I was like, well, now that you say that, I don't really know either. And so we took the lifestyle design part out of that. And I've learned some about marketing. Like, you do have to be very clear. It needs to be obvious what is offered. That seems pretty simple. But again, how can I bring multiple things in if I am multifaceted without confusing the marketing? And so now what I'm working on, I've got a marketing guy, and we basically, it's the Alley brand. And the Alley brand is associated with Hipster, with this online community. It's called the Real Estate Investing Cooperative, and Cash Flow Tactics. So like we're finishing the website now. It says like my companies and partners, and those three things are on it. And it specifies each of, because all three of those things are 100% tied together. Like, if you are involved with all three of those things, you're done. But you also don't have to. Hipster sells the properties. The cooperative is for the community. Cash Flow Tactics is for the money mastery. But they do all play together. And so that's been kind of the goal, is like, how can we make sure people know they play together without confusing the message? And the only common denominator between all three of those things is me. So that's how we're kind of lifting it down. Like right now, Hipster's website has my coaching offerings on there. We're going to pull that off of Hipster. So Hipster's only property sales, and put it back under my name. So it's fun. As much as I loathe marketing because I'm so bad at it, it is fun when you have people who know what they're talking about. Because I'm like, ooh, I like to design stuff, and this is designing a project essentially. I'm designing a website and designing how does this organization look, and essentially what it becomes is a holdings company. And I think holdings companies are going to become more and more popular. Again, coming all the way full circle back to what we're talking about, is this creator economy. And people aren't really single faceted anymore. It's like, oh, well, you have this, like, you have a branding company, but you also have the successful podcast. How do you make those play together? And I think holdings companies are going to be more and more popular. Whereas back in the boomers days, it's a wonder if someone had one company, much less five. You hear serial entrepreneur and all those buzzwords, but it is a thing now because we have so many resources at our disposal. We're allowed to be more multifaceted. That also can stress us out more, but we've got the tools.
Yeah. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's not really an elephant, because it's something we're all concerned about right now, right? The economy, what's going on, even with getting houses built. I mean, in LA, we had the fires a few months ago. Just the thought of trying to get people to fix something small in a home when there's so much work rebuilding, right? And then thinking about the materials. Are they coming from overseas? What kind of tariffs? So are you seeing some effects right now with your, any of the arenas that you're playing in?
Not immediately. It's not immediately in the arena I play in. Like, obviously, I live in Venice Beach, so I'm really close to where the fires were. And I know I've heard it so many times, so many of the homeowners who lost their houses in the fire, it was only 2 or 3 days after they lost their house that developers were already calling, trying to buy it. Like, it was nasty. Like, it was gross. And, so you've got all the building stuff. I have a couple properties in California. For the most part, I don't touch California real estate. It is chaos. It's circus. It's super risky. There's a lot happening on the California real estate side that makes it really pretty. I don't even recommend it for most people. So I only do out of state stuff. And like, when I look at the real estate stuff that I'm working with, for instance, in the last week, the stock market dropped record amounts. it was all these roller coasters and everything. And the turnkeys, people like to knock on turnkeys because they're like, oh, like how profitable could they be and like whatever. But this is a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise of the turnkeys is that these are affordable, cash flowing properties. And the reality, so like you mentioned, like all the uncertainty. When I think of uncertainty, I am uncertain about just about everything in this world because how can we know anything for certain? But one thing I absolutely, no question, know with certainty is that humans are always going to need somewhere to live. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot outsource that. I remember a long time ago, I was like, oh, well, car mechanics will never go out of business. How would they? Well, guess who's going out of business because of electric cars? Office buildings. Well, businesses will always need their offices. Well, nope, they don't really need those anymore either. And turns out now we can even outsource our brains. Thanks, ChatGPT. We don't even need our brains anymore. We can outsource pretty much everything at this point. And if we can't outsource it yet, we'll probably be able to, except we're going to have somewhere to live. Amazon can't take that over for us. It can't get shipped overseas. Like we need houses. And so when I'm thinking about where do I want to put my money, I want to put my money in the places that have to be in demand.
Yeah.
And when you look at how much the government and the big corporations are trying to eat up all the, single family houses and residential houses, that tells me that if they want them that bad, I want to own them that bad. Because if they're going to want that from me so much, they're going to have to hike it up, man. Like, oh, you want something that I have? You meaning I have the upper hand? And so again, this goes back to my very unanalytical analysis, right? Like that's the big picture type of stuff I look at. And the like 2008, for example, we all know what happened with or 2009, what happened with real estate. People were underwater in mortgages. It was just an absolute catastrophe. But the little rental properties who just go with the cash flow every month never got hurt because the rents didn't drop. And so as long as the rents didn't drop, like I had a rental property at the time and the value tanked to less than half of what I had just bought it for, but it didn't matter. And now it's worth, I think, double what I paid for it because if it goes underwater, that doesn't matter unless you try and sell it or refi it. So as long as you so if the term is buy and hold, when you think about a rental property, that's considered buy and hold. You buy it and you just hold it versus flipping, for example. Like if you bought a house right now to flip and who knows what happens with the economy and you're ready to sell in 6 months, but now the value's down to half, what are you going to do? And so that's, like I've been incredibly fortunate with all of this roller coaster. None of my stuff has been touched at all. And that's not to say it won't be. If we go into a massive recession and my tenants all lose their jobs, well, they're not going to be able to pay rent. And then I'm going to have to get, it's not that I'm recession proof by any stretch, but that's the kind of stuff that, people love shiny objects. Well, there's some risks that come with shiny objects.
Yeah.
So, the stock market crashing, all of us in the real estate world were like, whoo, not touching us, and like cash flow tactics, this money mastery system, they are very alternative. They're not into 401ks, IRAs, and everything they do is very legal, but it's not the typical stuff that we think about. How long have we all been getting pushed into 401ks? Well, that is impacted by something like this. And then as far as the tariffs go, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on tariffs. I try and I'm just saying all the drama. Just, let me know what my cost is later. But that is absolutely increasing the cost of building. Fortunately, the properties I work with are already existing properties, so they get rehabbed versus the new build. So it's going to be really interesting to watch, like, what's going to happen to new construction properties, what's going to shift around. But the only thing that could potentially affect me that I think could actually work in my favor is it'd be fun if we get lower interest rates on the mortgages. People have been saying for years those are going to drop. TBD, and it doesn't matter. It's not stopping me from buying now, but that would be kind of a potentially positive outcome of all this. But otherwise, so far, all good. But, again, I love that we just keep coming full circle back to the same message, is that if you follow what society tells you have to do, you're going to go through that roller coaster when the rest of society goes through it. So where's your creativity and where's that creation to, like, even if you just join the money mastery system and you put your money in things that are recession proof, that are not going to fluctuate at all, no matter what happens from up above. And, that's, again, like, it's the prompt to really, like, don't think necessarily like everybody else. Get creative. Because, again, we have to today. Like, we can't do anything about the roller coaster. There's nothing I personally could have done last week to prevent that gigantic stock market crash. I couldn't.
Right.
But
Or you just control what you
how do I
can.
weather that?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
talk about your book.
Oh, my book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Because again,
I
that
think
is
they're in the
also,
background back
it
there.
is not
So my
your
book
how to
was a
guide.
product of COVID quarantine,
Okay.
as you know, probably many books were, because what else are we gonna do while we're locked in our houses for months? But kind of going back to what I was saying about like, yes, I work with turnkeys, but like my passion is more related to the mindset and psychology arena around investors and how do we get new investors, not only getting in the industry, but getting in there safely. And, you know, I do coaching calls all the time, and I'm always telling people, like, everyone says there's no feelings in real estate. That's hilarious. There are so many feelings in real estate. It doesn't mean we're going to go buy an investment property based on feelings at all, but there's a fear of failure. You're about to slap a lot of money down on something. There's overwhelm. Like I call it the overwhelm epidemic. Like that is how to be a real estate investor. And you're going to get immediately bombarded and overwhelmed. There's overwhelm, you know, all those things. And so having kind of the mindset passion, I wrote the book called Not Your How-To Guide. Wait, it's been a minute since I've even said the name of Not Your How-To Guide to Real Estate Investing, Life Lessons on Hacking Your Mind Before You Hack Your Wallet. And the premise, it's a simple book. Like that's what I like to do is take really complicated things and just make it really simple. And I guarantee you in that book, there's things that nobody else talks about. Like not that they're my ideas by any stretch, but it's like, let's focus on the mindset aspect of that versus just how to flip a property. You know, how to flip a property does not hit some of the most important things. And so that's kind of where the book came from, is just my passion of sounding different and giving people different perspectives. It's like, if you read that book, it's going to slow you down and help you. Well, I said it's not your how-to guide, but there's a little how-to guide in the back. And it's going to give you steps of like, if you're interested in this industry, what steps can you take to make it easier on yourself? Because what I keep seeing is that people get so overwhelmed so fast, they're just tapping out. And then I'll grab them up as, you know, coaching. And I'm like, okay, let's dial this back. Let's quiet the noise and let's figure out what our next steps are. And there's interviews in the book with people who wholesale, who flip, me with turnkeys, you know, comparing the different strategies. Because again, that good news and bad news, there's so many ways to do it. And, you know, the main premise, if I had to come up with one main premise of the book, is how can you pick a strategy in the industry that fits you? Because, like, should you flip a property? I don't know. Maybe. Some people it's phenomenal for, but like, that'd be my worst nightmare. So, like, what things can you look at in order to determine what strategy is going to fit you best? Because ultimately, you don't want to go necessarily for the strategy that predicts it's going to make you the most amount of money. You want to go for the strategy that is the most authentic fit to you. Again, me, turnkeys, never on paper would make anybody any, like, as a business owner, what could I possibly do with turnkeys? Like, that makes no sense. It didn't matter if it made sense or not. That was so authentic to me. That's what grew the business, kind of thing. And so that's kind of the premise of the book. And I don't know if I'm letting the secret out, but I created a link for all your people to get a free digital copy of the book for anyone who's interested in checking it out. And you know, I already said it. I love the mindset side of everything because it's not just real estate investing. Is a lot of the things I talk about in the book, like that's why I said life lessons for hacking your mind before you hack your wallet. They pertain to life as well. And then same full circle, it goes back to how can we all do things that are more authentic to us and, you know, light us up in order to better help the world, kind of thing. So that's kind of where that comes from.
Fantastic. Well, we will definitely have that link in the show notes so that everybody can go to find out more about you, get the book.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a great read for this time in our lives, particularly as people are thinking about, well, what are safe investments? What do I really need to think about before I give away my hard-earned money, right?
For sure. And even on that link too, there's links to connect with me. I love, even if you just reach out and say hi, I love, like, I'm in this for the people. When I was an engineer, I used to bug everybody because I was more the extroverted, like, I'm like, hey, how was your weekend? Hey, want to go to lunch? Instant message. Hey, what are you doing? And they're like, wow,
like, we're
okay.
introverts. Let us just do our work.
Yeah. And when I put my 2-week notice in, because I had the quote unquote dream job and nobody ever leaves it. And they're like, where are you going? I was like, real estate. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, that actually, yeah. That. So I love talking to people. It's literally the crux of my business is I want to create the communities and the online stuff. So reach out, say hi. One-on-one coaching, I think, is ultimately where it's at. Like what you can get in 1 hour, like you can read the book and sure, but like we can just barrel out some action steps. And even if you're not interested in real estate investing, again, we've got the money mastery system is not specific to real estate. That's any six-figure earner. If you want to, gain control over everything, that's what that's for. But yeah, the community, if you want properties, that's fine. Money mastery, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I love hearing where people are. What are they interested in? And that helps me build my business as well, because if I don't know what everyone I'm talking to wants, I don't know what to offer them. So yeah, I just like hearing from everybody.
Yeah, fantastic. Allie, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, motto, verse, poem?
I do. And it is, don't take advice from someone you wouldn't trade shoes with. And that has gotten me everything. As I'm talking about real estate investing, you Google how to be a real estate investor. If some dude working 9 to 5, 7, or I guess it's more than 9 to 5, working 90 hours a week behind a desk in a suit is trying to tell me, give me the advice on how to be financially free or whatever, like, and I actually got my start in turnkeys because I had pursued the opportunity that came across my email inbox that I told you about.
Yeah.
And I went to meet the guy with the contract. And this guy shows up. He's in shorts, polo shirt, flip-flops, no briefcase, no laptop. And he had just flown in from, I don't know what country. So we're talking about this contract. And I was like, what's happening here? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you just flew in from wherever it was. You don't have a work schedule. You're in flip-flops and we're on a rooftop pool deck. Say more. And he became my mentor for about 10 years. And because he was literally living the life that I wanted, I was willing to take every piece of advice that dude told me. And eventually I grew out of that and we ended up parting ways and whatever. But, like my dad, he always pinched pennies. And so love him. I'll take his advice in so many other areas of life, not so much on the investment side. Like if you would not trade shoes with the person who's trying to give you advice, because everyone's going to be telling you what you shouldn't do, no judgment, but, maybe think a little harder before you take it. So don't take advice from someone you wouldn't trade shoes with.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, and I'm really excited for everybody to get a copy of your book.
Yeah.
Use it for their next phase and think about other ways that we can invest our money during these times. I think we're all looking for different outlets. So I know that we'll have information about all of your different practices and cash flow system you're talking about, your coaching, if people want to do turnkey home purchasing and everything else. So
and people for especially us in California, like the property. So I just went under contract for 2 properties out of state, and these properties freshly rehabbed are like $150,000 for a 3-bedroom, 1 or 2 bath house. Like
amazing.
So just to put for those of us in California, I don't even think we could buy a bathroom out here for that. So when you're saying turnkey investing, these are not high dollar, like you have to spend every ounce of your savings account. These are like super easy, affordable kind of things. And, the thread, even more to me, the important than the properties is the community. Like that is a common thread between, even if I'm selling you properties, you become part of a community. If you join my online co-op, that's all a community. Cash flow tactics, the money mastery system is completely community based. And again, I love all our full circles is with everything going on in the world today, things are scary. We talked about the economic roller coaster. None of us know what's going on. We're all in the same boat. And I think it's more important than ever to really band together with other people. And that's a common thread with everything I work with. I want other people involved. And I tell a lot of my coaching people and the cash flow tactics people, like, yes, technically investing is a solo sport because you're the one buying the property, whatever, but we don't have to treat it like a solo sport. Like we can treat it like a team sport where you've got support, you've got all that kind of stuff, and, good people know good people and all that. So that's, just kind of a parting message is today, just find a community, even if it's none of my communities, even if you're like, real estate, nasty, go find a community anywhere, and I think that's really, a lot of these conversations and all that, meeting other people like we did with the human gathering, I think that's where the power of everything is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, everybody who's watched this episode or listened to it on your favorite platform. Come back, listen to the next episode, another amazing guest teed up. Go check out Allie's resources. I am excited to read the book. I know, I haven't read it yet. So that is on my next reading list as well. So
and Amazon just made an Audible version of it, or an audiobook version. I was like, thanks, because that was one thing I couldn't figure out. And now Amazon does it for authors.
Okay.
So you can even listen to my book now, apparently.
Amazing.
I don't know if you'll get the visuals of some of the bar graphs I put in there, but it'll be all right. There's not many.
Awesome. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.